And I'd love to welcome our congregant, Bev Marker, who's going to talk to us about public defenders and their importance and their efforts. Thank you for speaking with us today.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Mother's Day. I am going to be reading my talk. I prefer not to do that, but it's 9 pages and I don't have all my points memorized. So, as a public defender, I soon learned that our clients and many in the general public did not think public defenders were real lawyers. Many felt they needed a paid lawyer. However, often we could get better results than a private attorney could. We were in court almost every day and we were assigned to specific courts. We got to know the prosecutors and learned to know how judges ruled. I often met with prosecutors the week before our next court date and we reviewed the cases together. We discussed pleas when it was appropriate. I knew which judges it was safe to have a bench trial before, as they knew the law and some were fairer than a jury. I also learned that cops lie. Many prosecutors don't care about justice, but only want a conviction, and few judges understood addiction. Over and over, I faced clients whose charges were due to their drug or alcohol addiction. Putting such people in prison does nothing to address the underlying addiction. Most inmates look for drugs as soon as they are released to the street again. It doesn't matter if they served a sentence for months or years. Not using does not stop an addiction. It only suspends it, or in many cases, they find a way to get drugs in prison. During my 10 years as a public defender, I only had 2 clients that I couldn't find something to like about them. Both committed murder to cover up for low-level felonies that had a maximum sentence of 3 years, which they would have served half of. I didn't see my clients as criminals, but as poor people who had committed crimes. Many had come from homes with abusive or drug-addicted parents. I was also surprised to learn that many of my clients could barely read or write, in spite of attending school until the 9th, 10th, or even 11th grade. The right to an attorney was established in Gideon v. Wainwright in 1963 by a unanimous decision of the Supreme Court. Clarence Gideon had asked a Florida court to appoint an attorney for him, excuse me, due to his poverty. After he was refused, he represented himself and lost. From prison, he filed a writ of habeas corpus to the Florida Supreme Court, arguing he had a right to be represented by an attorney, but the court did not grant him a relief. Gideon then sent a handwritten 5-page petition to the United States Supreme Court, asking for his appeal to be accepted. The court agreed. The decision was based on the obvious truth that in our adversary system of criminal justice, a person who is hauled into court who is too poor to hire an attorney cannot be assured a fair trial unless counsel is provided for him. His case is sent back to the trial court in Florida for a new trial. Represented by an attorney, he was found not guilty. The court in Gideon didn't require states to spend equally on prosecution and defense, nor did it specify how much states had to spend on lawyers for indigent clients. Unsurprisingly, states spent very little. This has not changed. In fact, it got so bad that in Louisiana, new clients were put on a wait list. Other states don't always provide counsel at a critical stage of the process. After the leaked draft of the Roe decision, I was reading about other cases that may be in jeopardy. I was shocked to learn that Justices Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch want to overrule the right to indigent defense counsel. Thomas and Gorsuch have publicly stated that Gideon went too far and too many defendants are benefiting from too many court-appointed lawyers. According to these justices, the Sixth Amendment really only promised some people a right to counsel. It was never intended to promise anyone a right to effective counsel. An incompetent attorney is worth about as much as a dead fly. But even this sorry standard is too much for these justices. As long as these justices remain on the bench, this movement to the right is a dangerous one. The conservatives have a tendency to chip away at issues until they finally get the change they're aiming for. As a public defender in Indianapolis, I saw the prosecutor's office had a larger budget and paid its attorneys better than the public defender's agency did. Prosecutors are elected and the public defender is appointed. So anytime the public defender's office asks for more funds, the prosecutor politicizes it. We are the good guys. More taxpayer funds should not be used to benefit criminals. Public defenders are always fighting an uphill battle against government lawyers who have greater resources, police officers or federal agents who want to imprison our clients, and judges, most of whom are former prosecutors with little sympathy for the plight of public defender clients. During my time as a public defender, I visited many clients in prisons and jails. Most of them are appalling. The food is not nutritious, dental care is ignored, and little is done to prepare inmates for their release. Since many of my clients lacked a basic education, just providing remedial English, reading and writing would be a big improvement. There was a time when certified college graduates taught prison classes. Some trades, such as barbering, were also taught. That is no longer true. Instead, what I saw was anger management, criminal thinking errors, decision-making, financial planning, master gardening, get smart about credit, wellness and nutrition, healthy families, and others. That while useful, they didn't fit the needs of my clients. We need to provide better education and meaningful rehabilitation opportunities for our inmates. Many jails and prisons that I visited were privately owned for-profit organizations. There are 3 large corporations in the United States that own all the private prisons. They are highly profitable. The executives receive enormous compensation packages, but the guards they employ are often poorly trained and poorly paid. Some evidence seems to indicate that private prisons cost more than government ones. Our economy should not include locking people in cages for profit. We must end private prisons. Law enforcement practices need to be improved. And I'm sure all of you know we need police reform. Let me tell you a little of what I saw. I mentioned earlier that I learned that cops lie. I once had a Marion County detective say to me that sometimes we have to lie. While I am aware that the Supreme Court finds nothing wrong in lying during interrogation, this detective was referring to lying on the stand. That belief and behavior is too common. I saw cops engaging in behavior towards my poor clients that they just don't do, or not as commonly in higher income neighborhoods. Let me tell you about my client named Ray Ray. Two officers were patrolling a predominantly Black neighborhood on foot. They began to chat with some people sitting out on the porch. One officer asked, "What's going on in the neighborhood? Who's around? What's going on at your house? Anything new?" The lady who lived there said, "My friend Ray Ray is staying and he's up there now." "Oh, can we go out and talk to him?" "Sure," she says. Few people actually say no to cops in these situations, and many don't know they can. The officers proceed up the stairs, wake up a sleeping Ray Ray, get him out of bed, and search him. He had a small amount of drugs. Now that case was fun for me. I kept telling Ray Ray that we were going to win this case. I rarely ever promised an outcome, but this behavior was a clear violation. The judge agreed that the officers violated the Fourth Amendment. Waking a sleeping client, patting him down, had nothing to do with public safety. I worked mainly in drug courts. One would almost think, in walking into drug court any given day and seeing the inmates in orange jumpsuits, that white people don't use drugs in the Indianapolis area. While the Black population is around 26%, the drug arrests are greatly disproportionate to that. It's due to the behavior of law enforcement towards minorities and in their neighborhoods. My clients were poor people who could not afford to hire an attorney, and that made my job difficult at times. Many of them believed I was not on their side and private attorneys were better. However, many of us had more experience because we were in court every day. Yet my clients would go to the law library, find a case or two they thought was like theirs, and argue with me. They didn't know if it was current law, often could not discern the differences, and didn't want to listen to me. Usually I was patient, but I felt frustrated at times too. I did care what happened to them, and I worked long hours and often nights and weekends. We did not get paid overtime, but no public defenders worked 40-hour weeks. This was especially true when preparing for trial. My clients were charged with crimes, often wrongly or illegally. I'll admit that most of them were guilty. Then it was my job to make sure that they were treated fairly and had the best outcome possible. Most of them were not bad people. Many of them had difficult lives and made bad choices. Only once did I ask to be removed from a case. That was only after a client tried to steal my wallet out of my office and got caught. She had followed me to my office after court to sign some papers. I dropped my purse and turned to the file cabinet to get the paperwork. She kept messing with things on my desk and dropping them. I began to get suspicious and glanced into my purse and noticed my wallet was gone. I confronted her, but she denied it, and I saw a bit of red peeking out of her sweatshirt. We argued a while, and suddenly she dropped her jeans to show me that the wallet wasn't there. Another attorney heard the commotion and came into my office. She asked to see her sweatshirt. My client held it out for her to pat, but she said no. Give it to me. Of course, she found my wallet. It was a little amusing when I said that I could not represent her anymore. She begged and said, "Oh, please no, Miss Bev. I want you for my lawyer." And thinking of my days as a public defender, I began to wonder about the situation here in Florida. I learned that Florida public defenders and prosecutors had their budgets cut. DeSantis instituted a 6% annual budget cut. As a former public defender, I find that concerning. I can understand that some budget cuts are always going to occur. However, we're looking at a constitutionally required service. This means that clients' rights are being put on hold This will affect the ability of the justice system to resolve criminal trials, since jury trials were put on hold and a backlog occurred. This will also further affect revenues, as charges for court costs, fines, and fees from defendants help defray the cost of prosecution and defense. I'd advise everyone here to pay attention to Florida's high incarceration rate. It is 20% above the national average, and with a country with the highest incarceration rate in the world, according to a report by the World Prison Population Risk. In Florida, as far as inmates are concerned, Florida ranks 10th, and that's with 433 inmates per 100,000 of population. I believe Louisiana is first with over 600. Multiple studies show this rate does little to protect the public beyond maybe a short-term gain, yet it imposes high economic and social cost. We need alternatives to mass incarceration. We also need excellent public defender systems in every state, something we do not have now. It will not end mass incarceration, but ensuring that every criminal defendant has satisfactory legal help would improve the justice system. Until the barriers are removed, due process and equal protection are imaginary for many of our citizens.